Partners in the campaign for the decriminalisation and declassification of petty offences in Africa. I would like to commend the Commission, the African Commission, for their cooperation, coordination, and the engagements in developing the guidelines on the decriminalisation of petty offences in Africa. The cooperation between civil society organizations and the African Commission is necessary and important in protecting the human rights in our continent, especially the rights of the most vulnerable persons, the poor and the marginalized. The campaign for the decriminalisation and declassification of petty offences started as a result of work undertaken to promote the Luanda guidelines and reform of pre-trial justice systems, which found that many people were in detention for long periods of time for petty offences such as being a rogue, vagabond, bathing in public, loitering, and being an idle and disorderly person. The objective of the campaign is to advocate for the decriminalisation and declassification of petty offences in Africa. The campaign focuses on petty offences, which are defined as minor offences for which the punishment is prescribed by law to carry a warning, community service, a low-value fine, or short term of imprisonment, often for failure to pay the fine. The existence and enforcement of petty offences has a disproportionate impact on the poor, the marginalized, and vulnerable groups, and the campaign seeks to advocate for the rights of these communities. And the key message of the campaign is that poverty is not a crime. Decriminalize and declassify laws targeting the poor. The campaign's target audience is very wide. It reaches out to those affected by the laws creating petty offences, including the vendors, homeless people, sex workers, street children, and those that enforce the laws, such as the law enforcement officials, including the prosecutors, the magistrates, judges, and local and regional society organizations, and the regional bodies. We encourage all interested parties to join our campaign. For more information, you can visit our website, which is pettyoffences.org. The principles are an important first step in promoting more just systems of criminal justice on our continent. However, the Commission and all its stakeholders must make concerted efforts to implement the principles within the broader paradigm of poverty reduction, equitable and sustainable development, and justice. Accordingly, as campaign partners, we issue this call of action to civil society organizations and state parties. We call on state parties to create mechanisms for broader poverty eradication agenda and not criminalize the poor who seek to partake in economic activities to alleviate poverty. Homelessness, bathing in public, and begging signal the failure to create inclusive economies. Let us not criminalize the consequences of our economic failures. There should be a social justice response on poverty and not a criminal justice response. National laws and bylaws that discriminate against the poor and the marginalized groups are unjust and must be repealed. We call on African states to not only welcome the adoption and the launch of the guidelines on decriminalisation of petty offences, but to ensure that petty offences are decriminalised and declassified. We call on civil society organizations and states to promote the implementation of the guidelines. We also call on states and civil society organizations to support democratic and human rights policing practices to build trust between the police and the public and eliminate harmful policing practices such as arbitrary arrest, unnecessary detention, excessive use of force, and extortion. We call on states and civil society organizations to encourage dialogue on the use of constructive alternatives to arrest and prosecution to deal with problematic behaviors in public spaces that do not pose a threat to public safety. We call on CSOs to engage in strategic litigation where necessary to accelerate and strengthen the decriminalisation and declassification of petty offences. We call on civil society organizations and states to implement the ECHPR principles on decriminalisation of petty offences to rid ourselves of colonial era crimes and other predatory forms of law enforcement. Our call is that poverty is not a crime. Let us work together to end the criminalization of petty offences and to promote fair systems of criminal justice. I thank you.
Merci. J'ai oublié de préciser que M. Chumile Sali est le représentant du Forum sur la surveillance civile du maintien de l'ordre en Afrique, APCOP, qui a été un partenaire privilégié, stratégique de la rapporteure ou du rapporteur sur les détentions, les prisons et l'action